Well, Teagen is letting everybody in the room, so we're gonna let her get everybody in, get everybody connected. Happy Tuesday, everybody. Looks like she's got a few more she's admitting. How are we doing, Teagen? Okay, awesome.
Good.
So today on the Wealth Building series, I'm going to talk about the 8 myth understandings between you and your financial wealth. And some of it you're probably going to think seems pretty simple, and it is, and yet it isn't. So I'm going to give some examples of things that might bring it to life as to why. There's 3 personal misunderstandings, and then there's 5 investment myth understandings. So let's go ahead and get started. The first one is just a quote from Gary Keller. To be successful with your experiences, you have to learn to wisely invest your time. To be successful with your money, you have to learn how to invest it. And there's lots of different reasons that people don't think that they, are smart enough or understand it enough. And we're going to go through all of those. But when Gary says this, what he's really talking about, the experiences that you have in life. You have to invest your time wisely so that you have the time to have those experiences with your family or with your friends. And then to be successful with your money, you've got to learn how to invest it. So let's look at these first 3 personal myths that Gary Keller talks about. The first one is, I don't need to be an investor. My job will take care of my financial wealth. Just remember that when you are trading your time for a paycheck, that's your job. That's not going to create enough financial wealth for you to be able to retire, or as I say, to get to your freedom date. What day do you want to be free to get up and do what only you want to, that's important to you? Financial wealth typically cannot be achieved without passive income. What does passive income mean? It means wake up money that, you wake up and it's in your mailbox or it's in your bank account. It shows up. So for me, I had a financial freedom day or that I wanted to get to. And when I was younger, I did a lot of things in order to be able to get there. So for me, a lot of people call it retirement. I call it my financial freedom day. Without investing, when you stop working, you will have no income. So I think about it this way. If my retirement was at 65 years old, if I haven't created any passive income, either through actively managing it or passively, then I'm going to wake up and I'm not going to have any income. So whether it's passive or active, we have to prepare and prepare in advance. So I'll give you guys an example. So if you think about investing versus spending or consuming. So if I were, and Teagen, just role play this with me for a second. I know you're letting people in, but if I were to show you a pair of shoes with the red bottoms, lady shoe, would you know about what those shoes were worth?
I would know. Yeah, that's a couple $1,000s.
Okay. So if I said to you, if you wanted to buy these shoes from me, it would only cost you $20. Is that a good deal?
Yeah.
If I said it only costs you $800, is that still probably a good deal?
Maybe.
Okay. If I wanted to sell you this pen right now, and I said, I'll sell it to you for 10 cents. Is that a good deal? Right. Smooth.
Yeah.
Okay. But if I wanted $10, what would you say?
I could probably get a free pen from somebody down the hall.
Right. So what Teagen's telling us is that she understands the value of consumables, of things we consume. Like if I was going to go buy a bike today, I would probably get on the internet, research bikes, figure out which one was going to be the best for what I wanted to do with it, and then figure out who had the best price and go buy it. So we know a lot about the value of consumables or things that we consume. And what Gary wants us to start thinking about is, do we know the value of investing, of investments, and how would we get there? So as we talk about it today, these different myths, personal myths, and then also the investment myths, Those are the things he wants me to help you guys understand. If you don't already, how do I learn investing? How do I actively invest versus just, how do I become an investor versus just a consumer? And how there's lots of different ways to do that. And we'll talk about some of those. But just remember that becoming an investor means that you have to learn how to value investments, not just consumables. Investors learn how to do that. And they learn how to create appreciation rather than just generate income. See, when we go to work every day, we're generating income, which is great. But in order to create appreciation with investments, we're going to have enough money set aside to start investing. So we've got to talk about cash flow and the path of money. The difference between a wealthy investor and most of us is that if I pulled $1 out today and I said to probably a younger person, what can I do with this $1? They would probably all say, well, you could spend it. You could spend the $1. That's not what an investor wakes up and says every day. They don't wake up and say, oh, I've got another $1. I'm going to go spend it. Do you know what investors wake up every day and say? Do you know what they say, Teagen? They wake up and they say, I'm going to spend 50 cents and I'm going to invest the other 50 cents. They're thinking like investors, not just people who are going to consume another $1. So and the sooner we start, the better. But that's the difference between becoming a wealthy investor and just a consumer of consumables. We want to teach you how to invest your money so that you too can create passive income. So I'll tell you a little story. Yes, I do have some 401k money, et cetera, things like that. But I'll tell you an interesting story. I actually got into real estate in a down market. Got into real estate in 1986 when the market, I was so fortunate, just when the market started to go down in Alaska. And it went down so far that I had sold a 3-bedroom, 2-bath ranch house, double car garage that year for $250,000. 3 years later, in May of 1989, I sold that same house for Fannie Mae for $25,000. You guys hear that? It went from 250 to 25. Okay. So would most people, and so, Michelle, I'm going to pick on you too, so that I can role play this, and Bridget, you also, because I can see you on the screens. Would most people, Michelle, if the investment properties or residential real estate that they had invested in went from 250 to 25,000 in 3 years, what would most people think?
Well, they wouldn't have a chance because I'd be buying them all, but they would think, oh my gosh, our market has completely tanked. But investors
Right.
would think, oh my gosh, what a huge opportunity, because these are going to be worth more money, because they've seen, a lot of investors have seen the up and down.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And so most people would think, see the problem. We have a problem in the market rather than seeing the opportunity. And as we talk more about examples, I'll show you that there's always an opportunity in every single problem that we find that most people would say is a problem. So what was interesting about that is a lot of the banks got properties back. I mean, it was back in the day where people just would go to the bank and turn in their keys. And so this one bank in particular was getting a lot of different properties back. And they asked me to come and make some presentations to their board of directors about how they could actually get, sell these properties and get them off their balance sheet. Interesting thing happened. The bank that I banked with at the time, I had purchased a company, a real estate company, and they had a note against that real estate company, but I didn't purchase the stock. I only purchased the assets. So I wasn't obligated for that debt that was before me and wasn't mine. However, I made a personal decision to pay that debt off anyway. And you think, well, why would I do that? Well, it was, the name of the company. And I just thought it was the right thing to do. That same bank started calling me when these properties would come in and asking me if I just wanted to buy them. They would let me buy them for $0 down or really, really great terms. And so I started buying duplexes and 4plexes and 6plexes. And Michelle, if you can believe this, in 1989, I bought a 6plex 2 of the units weren't finished, but 4 of them were, for $69,000.
Insane.
Insane, right? And so I sold them when the market came back, which took 7 years to what it was worth before the crash. And I sold some of them. So, and then I took that money and did a 1031 exchange into a big commercial building that I bought from that same bank, and completely remodeled it, et cetera. My whole point of the story is this: it looked like a problem. I took the problem, went and met with the bank to help them find solutions to their problem. At the end of the day, because I had paid off a debt that wasn't mine, but was attached to the business that I bought, they trusted me. And then they either had me sell their properties or they gave me the opportunity to buy them, whichever I preferred. That was kind of the start of the opportunity for me to start building wealth. And I chose to do it in real estate because it's what I know. Most people saw that as an opportunity or as a problem. There are a lot of people that took all their money off the table, didn't buy anything, and they just said, the market's crashing. This is a really bad idea to buy real estate. And I just took the opposite approach and said, where's the opportunity in this big mess? And that I had only been in real estate 3 years when that happened, but I'll never forget it because I still am a client of that bank after 38 years. And it's been I've had a great relationship with them. So to become an investor, I chose, now what I could have done when I sold those properties is I could have taken the money that I made and spent it. I could have I could have spent it on a brand new car or something like that, but I chose to not spend it and to instead invest it back into more real estate. So for me, when you look at myth number 1, I don't need to be an investor. My job will take care of my financial wealth. My job, trading my time for money, just paid my bills. It wasn't going to help me become wealthy. I had to figure out how I was going to use financial instruments in order for me to start building cash flow and wealth. So financial wealth cannot be achieved without passive income. And I kind of figured out what I wanted most people call it their retirement day to be, or their retirement. What I learned along the way is that, yeah, that might be my financial freedom day, but I'm never going to retire because I love doing what I do. So to me, it just became a financial freedom day, the day that I knew I could get up and do anything that I wanted to do with whomever I wanted to do it with. And that was an awesome day for me. So I also very, very quickly figured out that a 401k or something like that. And I was self-employed. So as soon as I got out of college, I went right into real estate. That wasn't going to be a retirement outcome for me. And so I was going to have to do it a different way. So Gary says you become an investor only once your money works for you. So you can work for money and trade your time for money, but you want your money to start working for you passively while you're sleeping, if you will. And I knew that if I wanted to reach my financial freedom number, I had to change my thinking from being a worker to an investor. And I grew up in a family, that my dad was very much a worker, never thought about being an investor, never thought about passive income. And today my dad lives very simply on Social Security. And the thing about that is, it kind of goes into some of these additional myths. Let's look at number 2. And that is, I don't have to be financially wealthy. I'm happy with what I've got. The problem is you don't know what's coming, and emergencies happen. And when they do, they cost you more than you think. And in my particular case, in 2018, my dad had a stroke while plowing snow. And while they were able to save my dad, what they figured out is that he needed to have open heart surgery, but he couldn't have open heart surgery, which he had Medicare to pay for, until he got his teeth fixed. So because I guess your teeth are very, very much aligned with, if your teeth aren't in good health, it can affect your heart. Well, my dad didn't have the money, but I did. And so for me, the point is that you don't know when, someone in your family is going to show up on your doorstep with a child in their hand saying, I need help. I didn't know that my dad was going to have a stroke and need to have these other medical procedures done, which were not covered by insurance, in order for him to have open heart surgery. So to say that I don't need to be financially wealthy, I'm happy with what I've got. Most of us need to, for me, I knew I needed to become wealthy because I knew that a lot of the people that I cared about had not made those same decisions when they were young. And so I just chose when I was younger to really start building financial wealth. And so I realized point number two, that the more you have, the more lives that you can impact, either by, sharing your money, giving it away to charity, helping family members that come under hard times, or maybe that didn't plan that well for retirement. And so for me, learning to be financially wealthy also gives you the knowledge, not only to help yourself, but to help others and to help others who want to learn, like all of you. That's one of the reasons that we started the Wealth Series, is to help everybody, to achieve their freedom goal. So for me, wealth isn't about money. It's about what you do with the money. So money is good for the good that money can do. So I just decided I wasn't going to apologize for it, but I wanted to make a lot of money. And like I mentioned, when that happened with my dad, my sister wasn't in a position that she could help at all. As a matter of fact, I'd helped my sister many, many times throughout our lives. And so, I'm always thinking about, well, what are the unforeseen challenges or opportunities to help dear friends that may be necessary? 2 of my 5 children were in major vehicle accidents that required plastic surgery, required a lot of surgeries, et cetera. Our medical insurance didn't cover all of it. So being financially wealthy is not only about my freedom, but also the freedom of those that I care about, that I'm able to help and take care of when it was necessary, and they were not able to do that. So for me, it was, I do need to become financially wealthy because I want to be in a position where I can help others that maybe didn't plan as well, or maybe it was, another good friend of mine, her parents were teachers. And so they relied on just, the money that was put away in their 401k while they were teachers. And when retirement came, they really didn't have the money to retire. And so I just didn't want to be that person. And I was willing to give up some in my younger years in order to set aside money to invest as I got older. And I always looked at every single challenge that came along in the real estate world as an opportunity. So I learned to start looking for investments, and I'll talk about that in a little bit here. And also, well, the other thing I would say is that when I was younger and made the decision that I was going to live beneath my means, and I wasn't going to spend money on fancy clothes, fancy vacations, fancy cars, I was going to drive a used car. There's a lot of things that I was willing to give up when I was younger, like free vacations, like camping with your kids instead of, going to the Ritz. I'm kidding, but not really. I mean, we camped in Denali Park when the kids were little. So to me, I was willing to make those little sacrifices on the front end to actually get further down the road. And so for me also, my first home was an investment property. So, and I'm gonna ask Teagen another question just because I happen to know what her house. Teagen, when you bought your house, was that going to be your be all end all house?
No.
But it was a great property to buy, your first home, and it be an investment. You fully intend to have for that to be an investment.
Yes.
So most people are unwilling. They want to go buy the house that they want right now, rather than maybe waiting a little longer, and maybe, well, for us, I bought multifamily properties, and I was willing to live in a multifamily property so that I could, because that was going to be an investment property also in my younger years. So there was probably a period, and just go with me with this because it was a long time. I was very, very frugal, very, very careful for the first 20 years of my adult life. And I was willing to forego some of the things that maybe I would have liked to have had during that time so that I could invest and build wealth and opportunity. So let's look at myth number 3. So there's 3 personal myths and there's 5 investment myths. So this other personal myth is, it doesn't matter if I want money or I need it, I just can't do it. And I would say that's absolutely not true. Investing isn't complicated. It just may be foreign to you initially. So initially, I didn't go try to buy a big business and that I didn't know anything about. What I did is I started small, and I'd buy little pieces of land, buy them on time, pay them off, sell those. Then I started buying multifamily properties. And then I started buying commercial buildings. And so I would learn as I went. I didn't get out over my skis. I kept it simple, and making sure that it didn't matter what market I was in, I could still afford the payment. And I'll talk about that in a little bit too. I'd also say this: once you understand how money works, you'll see opportunities everywhere. So to say that you can't do it, it's just that you're not looking. I made the comment earlier, like most of us know the value of like the bottle of water. We know a value of clothes. We know a value of shoes. We know a value of all those things because we watch it all the time. We research it. We know a lot about things that we consume. Most of us don't know a ton about investments or how to value a property, but I guarantee you this: if you got up every day and all the way to work or wherever you were going, you were constantly looking for what might be a good investment. And you were seeing, oh, well, I see that house has a bunch of newspapers piled up in front of it. I wonder if something's happened in their life cycle and maybe they want to sell. So you have to start looking for opportunities. They're not going to come find you. And once you do that and other people know that you're looking for opportunities, they'll bring them to you. And so you're not just learning yourself, you're also learning so that you can teach your children, your grandchildren, other people that you care about in your business, how to actually start seeing opportunities. Once you do, you really see them everywhere. So to say it doesn't matter if I want it or need it, I just can't do it. It's just that you have to make a decision that you want to learn it, because money does have rules associated with it. And once you learn the rules of money and time and how to value investments, you'll be great. And so if you look at the last piece there that I have that's bold, if you can live on less for a period of time, you will be blessed with more the rest of your life. So for me, as I mentioned, how did I get started? I chose to live beneath my means and save money for investments and just start small with what I knew. I knew real estate. I knew the real estate that was super hyper local around me. And anytime that there was something that happened in the real estate market, which this is my 6th shift, if you can believe that, in 38 years, I was always looking for an opportunity out of it, because what I learned that first time around was just pure luck. I had no idea that those opportunities were going to show up. Now, once I became aware, then when we had other shifts, I was also constantly looking for opportunities, because people aren't always trying to maximize the amount of money coming out of a property. Sometimes they have other goals that are more important to them than just the money. So those are the 3 personal myths. You don't need to be an investor. My job will take care of my financial wealth. That's a myth. You don't need to be financially wealthy. I'm happy with what I've got. And it doesn't matter if I want or need it, I just can't do it. If Kristan Cole, a girl from Meadow Lakes who ended up, homeless at the age of 12, can put this to work, you can too. You just have to make a decision and start small, create your financial freedom number when you want to be financially free to get up and do whatever you want to do every day and who you want to do it with. And then start with what you know. Most of us on this call know real estate. So let's talk about investing in real estate. So the first myth of investing in real estate is that it's complicated. Investing is only as complicated as you make it. If you start small with what you know, and then as you work in real estate, whether it is residential, multifamily, commercial, retail, warehouse, you'll start learning it, and you can learn it by following along with other people who've already gone where you want to go. So investing is just as complicated as you make it. It doesn't have to be complicated at all. I will tell you this though, this is a flat fact. If any of you are sitting there a little anxious right now, the longer you put off starting to invest, the more anxious, stressed you will become. The age you are is the age you are. But getting started sooner than later will alleviate some of that anxiety. So for me, it was preparation. It was making decision. I was going to live beneath my means so that I could take that additional money that I was earning by trading my time for money and start putting it into investment properties that I knew something about. So that's actually how I started. And I wanted to get on the right side of appreciation instead of constantly consuming my money. And then investing is not complicated, but money does have rules. And you can either learn it from hanging around somebody else that's already, learned these rules. You can certainly read them. There's several great books about investing, and not the get rich quick schemes. Those don't work. But it's not complicated, but you just have to understand money. Now, fortunately for me, when I was in high school, I worked at a cafe, and the owner of the cafe was super, super smart. I mean, really smart when it came to money, stocks, bonds, how time affects money, compounding, all those things that you never learned in high school. But he would teach it to me. And he and I are still super, super good friends today. He still owns that small cafe in my hometown. And every time I go home, I go and visit him and we talk about investing. So he was willing to teach me. And so, I want to make sure that I'm teaching the people that I care about. So he taught me the rules of money and simple things that I wish I'd learned in high school, but they didn't teach it in high school. So fortunately, there was somebody that was willing to sit with me and help me learn it and learn how to use it to my advantage. Now, I graduated high school in 1980. By the time I graduated, you just have to remember how long ago that was. I had saved $5,000 in the bank from working at this little cafe. I forgot to tell you, I worked there too. And he started teaching me how to invest that in simple things in the stock market so that I didn't lose my money, but he just taught me that compounding. So investing is not complicated unless you make it so. And just learn the rules of money, either by having someone mentor you that's already gone where you want to go, or by reading books that are available on money. Number 5, the best investments require knowledge most people don't have. The best investments are typically in the areas that you already know something about. We all know something about real estate. So when you walk in to do a listing appointment, you should always be asking yourself the question, should I buy this property? That's exactly what one of my listing agents did. Walked into a property, saw the property was a good investment. She didn't buy it, but she notified somebody who could only go up to a certain amount of money, and she bought the property, and it was her first investment. So just the best investments are always going to be in the area that you already know something about. I don't try to go out and be a guru with stocks and bonds, even though I know a lot about them. I don't know nearly as much about them as I do real estate. So I stay in my lane, so to speak. And then investing is nothing more than just understanding value. Gary Keller always says you make your money on the way in. What does that mean? Well, have you purchased the property either with such a down payment or a low interest rate so that it doesn't matter what happens, you can always make the payment? Here's what I mean by that. In 2003, I made the decision to build 6 fourplexes. And I built them and I put them on an adjustable rate mortgage that could move up to or down to in a year, but never more than 5 in the life of the loan. When I got done building them, they were worth about $235,000 at the time. Well, then the 2008 to 2010 market came along, and the market crashed, and those fourplexes that had gone up to like 350,000 were now worth maybe 150. But here's the interesting thing. They always were rented, and I always had positive cash flow because of how I went into the transaction, meaning I could always make the payment because the interest was or the payment was so low compared to rents. Rents didn't go down, the value of the property did, but I didn't sell the property, so I didn't have to take a loss. I kept the property because it was a cash, they were cash cows. And then I sold them in 2020 for $450,000 each, and did a 1031 exchange into some properties in Arizona. So I owned them 17 years. So the value of the property came all the way back and far exceeded what I had paid to have them built. And during that downturn in the real estate market, the multifamilies actually became a hedge against the real estate market, which was crashing, because people always have to have a place to live. So they always rented. They always, the rents never went down during the downturn. And so sometimes I think about investing as, how can you put, even though I invest in real estate, how do you create a hedge in case the market goes down? And that's with investment property that kicks off cash flow. Some people think about buying land. I've bought pieces of land before. Problem with land is that you still have to pay taxes on it, real estate taxes, and it doesn't throw off any cash flow whatsoever. So I've owned pieces of land in my lifetime, but what I really learned during that 2008 recession was that income property is a hedge against the real estate value going down. So to me, it wasn't complicated. I just learned that in my portfolio, I want to have both. I don't want to be sitting there and not be able to afford the payment. So making sure that you understand the value, and you also can, you could afford the payment. And we'll talk some more about that. Investing is risky. I will lose my money. By definition, investing is not risky. Investing is investing. The problem is that most people don't go into the property buying it below value. Because when you buy it above value, that's called speculation. That's not investing. And a lot of people are speculators by definition, because they don't try to make their money going into the transaction. So making sure that they're buying the property below value. And if they pay too much for it, sometimes I put on there, sometimes you get bailed out if you hold it long enough, which is exactly what happened with my fourplexes. I held them long enough that the value came all the way back. However, they cash flowed the entire time. Sometimes that can give you a false sense that you're really a smart investor when you just got lucky. The market actually held it long enough that the market actually came back for the property. So for me, being involved in multifamilies, I still have several. Right now I have 31 doors in Kansas City, Missouri, because they're a hedge against other investments that don't behave the same way when the market slows down. Successful investors are able to time the market. People ask me all the time, is it the right time to get in the market? Is it the right time to get in the market? Truth is, that's the wrong question. Because if you are an investor and you're getting up every day and you're looking and watching for investments, you're looking for opportunities in situations you can't control. We can't control inflation. The government, the federal government does. We can't control unemployment, but we can control what we can control. So if we look up every day and we're looking for a property, we're looking for an investment, and people know that we are. The truth is, in successful investing, the timing finds you because you're always looking. But most people always ask me, is this the right time to buy? You should always be looking for an investment. And if you're always looking, the timing will find you. And when you find a good investment, also the money will show up, because that's the other thing I hear. Well, I don't have the money. So if an investment showed up, I wouldn't be able to buy it anyway. If you find the right investment, the money will show up, meaning there'll be an investor out there who'll be willing to partner with you on it, and or pay you a bird dog fee, if you will, for sharing the investment with them, telling them about the investment for them to take advantage of. So when you find a good investment, there's always going to be money out there to show up. And when you're always looking for an investment, the timing is going to find you versus you having to find the timing. And choosing not to invest your money, inflation is always going up. It's just at different rates. It just guarantees that you're losing some of your buying power because of inflation. So leaving my money, I like having cash in the bank so that reserves, but beyond reserves, keeping too much money in the bank is just, your money's going backwards because of inflation. So I'm always looking for investments, and I'm looking for investments that provide cash flow, because that's the key to not having to change my time for a job, change my time for money anymore. So I would ask you guys, are you always thinking like an investor? When the market shifts and there's things going on like a pandemic and you can't control it, are you constantly looking for what you can control, which is looking for an investment that maybe nobody's paying attention to? I'm letting people know that you're looking to invest. Once you know that, they do know that about you, they will be bringing properties and opportunities to you. That's what happened to me. I actually had 2 real estate agents in Kansas City, Missouri that actually brought the multifamily opportunities to me. So we know the best time to plant a tree is 20 years ago. The second best time is today. So the reason I'm bringing up some of these myths is so maybe you can dismiss them and start building your wealth tree today, and start by looking at things that you can control, and knowing that if you find a good investment, finding the money to partner with you is not going to be difficult. There's always investor money out there looking to partner with other people. All good investments are taken. Now, I also hear people say all the time, well, right now there's no more good properties to buy in Scottsdale, Arizona. All the good investments are taken. And the truth is that in any market, you're always going to be able to find an investment. There's always people needing to transact. And like I said before, sometimes, the bigger reason to sell is sometimes not maximizing the value of their investment. There may be other reasons that they want to sell that are far more important to them than just maximizing all of the money coming out of the investment. And you think, are there really people like that? Yes, there are. Then they have their own reasons. So, and when you do make an investment, remember this: it's not the fault of the investment that the timing of when the value is realized doesn't match your affordability. What does all that mean? When you buy a property, it's not the fault of that property if the timing doesn't work out and the real estate market goes down, and the amount of money that the market wants to pay you doesn't match your ability to afford the property. So that's why you always have to make decisions about investing going in, not coming out. The money is made going in. So you have to really look at an investment and see whether or not, if the worst thing were to happen in terms of the market changing, can you still afford that property? Can you still make the payment? Is the rent going to be enough to match the payment? So that's why making your money going in and making sure that you can make the payment. So my rule of thumb, and this is just my rule of thumb, is I never ever buy a property and put less than 30% down. I've just learned through so many shifts over the last 38 years that if I put 30% down and I have a reasonable interest rate, and these in particular in Kansas City, Missouri, I got 4.25%. It doesn't matter what's going on in the real estate market. I can drop my rents to below market rents and still make my payment. That's what I mean by really making your money going in rather than trying to always make it coming out. And that was just for me to make sure that because I didn't want to wake up one day and be in a position where I couldn't afford the payment and my property would be foreclosed on. So for me, once I understood investing and the difference between consuming that dollar versus maybe only consuming half of that dollar and setting aside the other half for an opportunity. And I understood the difference between just of being an investor and not just being a consumer of goods. That really changed my thought process around money when I was younger, and being willing to live on less when I was younger in order for me to live on more as I got older, and that compounding interest from those investment properties started to show up. I call it mailbox money or pillow money. And every market does have its share of good investments. They're there, but you're not going to see them if you're not looking for them. And you've got to be able to afford the investment, which takes us all the way back to the path of money. And are you saving money to actually make that first investment? Because I think that's the other thing too. People think, well, I can never save enough money to make an investment. Well, maybe on your first property, you partner with somebody else and you put in the sweat equity. Maybe it's on a property that needs some fix up work, and they put in the down payment money, and you partner on your first one to learn how to do it. I can tell you, when I first started buying multifamily properties, I did all the property management, and we did super majority of all the repair work. So those are the things I was willing to do when I was younger. Today, I have a property manager, and I do not do repair work and don't fix toilets at night. So, but when I was younger, I was willing to do that in order, because you only have three things that you can really, you're either using your influence, your money, or your time. Well, when I was younger, didn't have any influence, and I certainly didn't have any money, but I had time. Today, my time is more valuable to me. And so I'd rather use my money and my influence and save my time for my family so that I can have experiences with them here now, now that I've reached my financial freedom number. So I'd be happy to answer questions about this. This was Gary's 8 myths, three of them personal and 5 of them investing, but the myth understandings about financial wealth. And I think a lot of people don't get started. And so then fear and anxiety builds up, and the start date gets delayed, which brings more anxiety. So what kind of questions do you have for me that I can help you with, maybe get you on your path, or maybe help you with further your path of building wealth?
Someone was asking what your top 3 books on investing would be. I put in there Tax-Free Wealth by Tom Wheelwright, even though that's not investing, but I know you love that book. What other ones?
The book that the guy that walks on fire rocks, Tony Robbins, he has a book. It's like that thick, but it is so good, super, super good on finances and wealth. Then I also like Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett has also written books on investing. But I actually didn't read those till later in my adult life because they obviously weren't in print then. But those are the books that I really like. I think Tony Robbins was written like 7 years ago, maybe. The Tom Wheelwright book was just published last year. That's a good one. And that's really to help you pay less taxes, which I really like, paying less taxes. So those would be the books. What else?
What's your preferred investment group organization structure, or thoughts around that?
You mean legal entity that you hold it in?
Yeah, and just like sort of some other like ways you've structured or think are good practices to think about.
Oh, yeah. So for instance, when I gave the example about 30% down on a multifamily, some other examples of investments and how I structure them.
Oh, no, I was talking about like an investment group, how you would organize that. legally and
Oh, I see. Okay.
Like
Are you
if
talking
he was
about a-
going in on a partnership.
Yeah,
Right.
are you talking about a syndication where?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's a really, in my opinion, that really requires some special, in my opinion, legal advice. For most of mine, and I've had partners before, and we, typically we just use an LLC, and we that's typically what you want to hold it in. You don't want to hold it in an S corp, because with an S corp, there's just some tax consequences when you sell a property that you just don't want to be holding it in an S corp, or in a partnership that you've chose or elected to tax as an S corp. You don't want to do that either. So an LLC partnership is typically what I use in terms of holding, if I have partners. And then we just, I usually have our attorney write an operating agreement that says who's going to do what, and how we're sharing in the profits and how we're sharing in the expenses. And I'm typically always the managing member of the LLC.
thank you. And thanks for doing these.
Oh, you're
We've got
welcome.
Joy with her hand raised and then a couple questions in the chat box as well.
Okay, go ahead.
Kristan, I think I heard you say that earlier in your life you invested in a Alaska property.
Mm-hmm.
Did you live there then?
I did. I've lived there for 53 years. My husband and I still have a home there. My real estate hub business is located there in Anchorage and in Wasilla. And then I just expanded down here to Arizona about 10 years ago and started buying businesses here in Arizona, real estate companies.
Is it a problem for you to have property in a different place than what you live?
It would be if you didn't have a great property manager, 100%. Property manager will make or break you. And that's why one of the reasons that I chose to go to Kansas City, Missouri with a lot of my rental property is because I knew the two agents and I knew their property manager. And I can just tell you, a property manager will make or break an investment. Choose wisely.
What percentage do you pay a property manager?
When I was younger, typical in Alaska was 10%. However, in Kansas City, it's 8% of the
Thank you.
gross rents.
Thank you.
Mhm. And also, little tips and tricks, with the new properties I bought, I did cost segregation, which allows you to depreciate the property much, much faster. It allows me to keep more of my income rather than paying income tax now. And the reason I did that is because if I were to pass away next year and still own the property, my heirs get a step up in basis. So they don't have to recapture that depreciation that I was able to write off and reduce my tax liability. And when I was younger, I wouldn't have done that because I wasn't in my high income earning years. I'm in my high income earning years right now and want to defer or want to not pay as much taxes as possible. So using cost segregation with your depreciation on your multifamily properties can be a really smart thing to do.
Are you saying cost segregation?
Yes.
Thank you.
Kristan, what would you say some pros and cons are of investing in land?
Yeah, so I invested in a property that was 5 acres, and it was a good investment. It was undervalued. The guy that owned it owned a carpet company and he needed the money. So he sold it to us at a discount. And I knew it was a discount because that's what I do for a living. And it was in Wasilla. And I held that property for 5 years. It was very flat. It was a great piece of property. And lo and behold, the Matsu Borough, which is like a municipality, decided that they needed to build a new fire station. And guess whose property they chose? Mine. And so the Matsu Borough actually made me an offer on my property, which was more than double what I paid for it. So land can be a great investment, but you need to make the investment, you need to go in buying undervalued property, because otherwise, commercial property, especially, the taxes can eat your lunch, the real estate taxes. and it's not producing any income. So that can be a good reason. Also, if you buy a piece of land, you could also, do a lease for, companies like to do leases, satellite leases, tower leases on raw land and pay you money. That could be another good reason, is maybe the cell phone company wants to put a tower on your property and just pay you rent or lease the property from you. That can be a good reason. Buying a large parcel like 40 acres and subdividing it into residential lots can be a good reason. However, that's a long, that's a 3 or 4 year process from the time you buy the land to time you sell the last lot, if all goes well. So I've never done subdivisions. I've sold them to builders before, but I've never actually done a subdivision. So I haven't owned anything. One time what I did is I took a 2.5 acre lot. I went to the municipal Borough and I applied to do a flag lot. They don't do flag lots anymore, but allowed you to subdivide the lot in half without having to do a formal subdivision. So it was super inexpensive. And then I built 2 fourplexes. So instead of having to buy land for each one of them, I just split the lot and built it on each side of the lot. So saved me about $25,000 in land cost by doing it that way. So that's another good reason, something like that would make total sense.
I'm going to pick this one because I think maybe it could be helpful, and you've got some tips in this general idea of kind of people who maybe aren't quite there yet for buying their first home. What would you recommend maybe to someone who writes off a majority of their income and has a hard time qualifying, or just some tips and tricks for people who are getting ready for that process too?
Well, if you are 1099 or you're self-employed, and so you don't show a lot of income, from a W-2, you can still get a loan, but typically they're hard money loans, and typically the interest rates are higher. But it might make sense if you were like going to do a flip. And so you didn't need the money that long doing a hard money loan. I've done hard money loans before, loan people money. I've done second deeds of trust that, on properties where basically you're loaning them money and putting a second lien on their property so that when they sell it, they'll pay you back. But I would just say it's hard money loans are about the only way to do that. But what you could do is if you found something that you could fix and flip and put your hard sweat equity in, you would have a big enough down payment. Because oftentimes with a big enough down payment, it doesn't matter. When I bought those properties in Kansas City, I never had to show a W-2 or any of my tax returns because of the amount of money I put down. And I bought them in my LLC's name, not my personal name. So, those aren't easy to do, but they're doable. So it just depends on your situation. But sometimes people that are self-employed, like we have fishermen in Alaska, are very seasonal construction workers. And typically you can find ways around it, but typically it does require a larger down payment money, which typically the people in those type of industries can collect a lot of cash in a short period of time. And so that's doable for them. So that's what I would say is, usually you can do that if you've got if you can put a bigger down payment down. Or one time, one of my adult children borrowed part of the down payment money from me. And it was an FHA loan. So I did a gift loan to her. So and then she paid me back later. So there's ways around it, but you have to be you have to know the loan programs, and you have to be pretty creative. Any other questions, Teagen?
There's a few. I know we only have so much time, so I'm trying to pick ones that apply to the most. Do you have thoughts on a tax lien sales?
Yeah, it depends on the redemption time in that location. Redemption periods are different in every state. So I would want to know what the redemption time is, how much. So what that means is if you buy something at a tax sale, the person that owned the property, that has a lien on the property for not paying their taxes, can come back and redeem their property within a specific period of time. So I really don't like to buy tax liens because, I'd rather I'd rather, unless you're in a market that's really appreciating, then it could make some sense, because you really don't have free and clear title to that property. Sometimes it could be a year or two. So I don't really like having my money tied up and then all of a sudden they redeem the property and I'm back to square one. So that's not my favorite investment.
Is there a percent that you recommend between 401 and investment property? I'm not sure what that means, but I think you know. And if you need clarification, Angela, feel free to come off mute. If Angela is still with us, we'll come back to that one. If your investment property is not cash flowing and it's costing you to carry, do you recommend selling it?
If you cannot, if you don't have the money to carry that property, because anytime there's a shift, no one can wave a magic wand and know when we're going to come out of it. Typically, most downturns are over a 2 or 3 year period of time, and it takes twice as long to come out of it that it did to go into it. There's a big difference between what we're going through right now and what we went through in 2008, which was caused by the banks, softening their credit policies and basically loaning to anyone. That was really the problem. And back then we had, 4 million houses on the market. Today we have less than 1 million houses on the market right now, the lowest number since in recorded history. So there's not a lot of inventory on the market right now. Interest rates are coming down, inflation's coming down. But for me, if it's negative cash flowing, I have to ask myself the question, can I hold on? If the answer is yes, then the next question is, what do I want to choose to hold on to the property, or do I want to sell it, cut my losses, and look for another opportunity? Anything else?
Last question, going back to kind of what we were talking about with having a hard time qualifying in the hard money loan. How hard is it to set up an LLC to be able to do something like that?
How hard is it to set up an LLC?
Mm-hmm.
It's not hard at all. It doesn't, you can go to the Division of Corporations and pull down the documents, that you need to fill out. If you've never done one before, then, you need to understand your position as to how you want the tax election that you want to select with that LLC. And that you would want to talk to your CPA or your bookkeeper about, so that make sure you're making the right tax election to go with that LLC.
Awesome. That puts us right at the top of the hour. We like to be respectful of, go ahead, respectful of your time. So I'll let Kristan close us out.
So I just want to let you guys know that next month we're going to talk about the path of money. So we talked a lot about myth understandings, of personal misunderstandings and investment misunderstandings. Next month, we're going to talk about the path of money. So, what are all the different things you can do with your money? What are the pros? What are the cons? Which ones are passive? Which ones are active? What are the rules around passive and active money? So so next month, that's what we're going to talk about is the path of money. And that's kind of for me, that was when I saw the path of money, was really able to understand what the 4 different choices were. I chose to actively be involved, and I chose to be involved with equities instead of financial instruments like stocks and bonds and REITs and things like that. So that's what we're going to talk about next month, February 28th.
So if you registered for this, you'll be registered for the next one automatically. This is open to the public, to your friends and your family. If you guys have people in your life, in your world who could use this knowledge to better themselves, please invite them. We would be happy to have them here and be able to share with them as well. So that's all. We'll see you on February 28th.
Thanks, everybody.